is Rich with God is Near. And what we're looking at in this one, it's Wes Huff, apologist and biblical scholar. Then he is on the Flagrant podcast. And so they have a question here about LGBTQ stuff that's translated in the Bible. It's argued that it's just biblical mistranslations. And they want to ask him what he thinks about that. And
I've heard a lot of people say that gay marriage and gay relations are just mistranslations of the verses, like Romans, the ones in the Old Testament. Do you think they're mistranslations and the Bible is saying that they don't ever just talk about gay marriage or gay relations in general? Or do you think that they're mistranslations?
Yeah, so the accusation is usually that the word homosexuality it gets incorporated into the Bible in like the modern era. So the words in Hebrew in the Old Testament Leviticus, Paul, particularly in 1 Corinthians 7, plays off of what the Greek translation of the Old Testament has and uses this word arsinokoites, which literally means to lie down a man with a man. And so I think it's not a mistranslation because the concept is there. Like what it's talking about is not obscure. It might be controversial, but it's not obscure in the Hebrew and Greek. The accusation is usually that it's not talking about like same-sex sex. It's talking about something like men sleeping with boys or temple prostitution. Yeah. I don't think you can really rationalize that. There's a guy named Robert Gagnon. That's your last name.
Yeah.
Robert Gagnon. Except do you say Gagnon?
Yeah, these people don't understand.
Wait, hold on. Is this guy about to justify homosexuality?
No. So Robert Gagnon is a scholar. He did his dissertation. He taught at Princeton for a while on this, like the linguistic and cultural context of homosexuality in the Bible. So his is kind of like the volume. So he goes through all this stuff.
Why are you laughing at that?
And talks about.
Because Mark comes from a long line of people.
He got him right.
Long line of croissants. We just call them croissants.
Yeah, we just call them croissants.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so he's a croissant historian, and then what did he find out?
Well, these concepts are like if you went back to Moses and you had two dudes and said we want to get married, Moses is
like for what?
What
he would say for what?
Yeah, well, that wouldn't be. He'd be like, that's not what marriage is.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's just because the word homosexuality exists now in English.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that the concept isn't there
back in the day
within the Bible. Yeah.
So in the Bible, it was frowned upon, even like whatever translation, whatever contextually. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. There's this answer related to LGBTQ and just basically translations, how they want to contextualize it. No, it was just something I've heard that related to. No, it was like Romans 1 that they were talking about just simple prostitution or something that they shouldn't participate in that. But it talks about unnatural relations with a man and a man, that they exchange natural relations with unnatural ones, men for men and women for women. And so it's hard to get around that. And the people that usually talk for it or in favor of it, people that are arguing for it so strongly, are homosexual. So they're going to look for a way to, and they're going to look for a way to justify it biblically. And I say that I try to say that with respect, and I know that those issues are going to be very difficult. They're filled with a lot of emotion, and it's very personal. But we have to come to the Bible and we have to come to God as he is, not as we want him to be. And so if we look at something in the Bible and we go, you know what, I don't really like that, so we're just going to throw it out, or we're just going to dismiss it and say, well, that's not applicable for me. Even if it's heterosexual stuff. Oh, sex before marriage, or adultery, that stuff, I'm not really worried about that. It's not for me. And we kind of ignore those areas because it's not hurting anybody. Yeah, it does. It hurts people around us. It's sin. It hurts people around us. So we got to think about it as God has designed relationships a certain way for them to work the best. Do relationships still work outside of God's design? Yes, but not the way that they're designed to work. So if we want the best results, we want to try to have relationships in the way that God has designed them, and that's how we have the best results. So, for example, like a homosexual marriage. Let's say you have two men that are together raising children. Those children do not have the ability to bond with a female and learn how to interact appropriately with a female. And they also have a twisted view of what marriage is and sexuality is as they grow up. So is that going to lead them towards homosexuality as well, or it being wrapped up in that whole framework of what they were raised in? Yes, really be for homosexuality because the people that just raised them are homosexual. So they're gonna have a hard time saying, no, homosexuality is wrong, because then they would be denying their own family that raised them. So it's very difficult situations once we start straying outside of God's design. So just think about that. I want to throw it out there. I know that that's not trying to be simplistic related to an answer. I would welcome further comments and discussion in the comments. And please subscribe if you'd like to get more thoughtful, thought-provoking videos in the future. Thanks for watching. This is Rich with God is Near, and we'll see you next time.